welcome to Fed by Fire, guys. I'm Christian Whitlow, and tonight I wanted to do a little something different. I wanted to take you guys to work with me. So first, I'm going to take y'all to work with me. Y'all can see what you think, and if you still want to continue watching the video to hear my boring ass talk, then you can. But without further ado, here you go. It's the bare necessities. On the way to work, y'all. We about to go get this bread. Catch y'all when we get there. What's up, guys? So here we are at my job. I'm gonna show y'all a little bit around. Show y'all how a former drug dealer goes to a full-time employee. What's up, Dave? Another day closer. Hell yeah. I keep dreaming and it gets me there.
That's what I love about a 4-day work week.
Hell yeah, I couldn't do that 5 days shit. Yeah.
This day's already in the books.
Yeah.
You're employed by your second one?
Yeah, I know. It's like God made that decision for me of not switching. You know what I mean? You see, y'all, and that is how you know, back in the day, you'd be unconversational and shit. But now, you see, like, somebody want to walk up to you, and that's just how you gotta express yourself. Or, you know, you can walk up and be a motherfucker with one of those lying smiles, like, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. See why most people, you know, out there running the streets and shit, out there killing themselves. I'm in this bitch making boxes, providing for my family, and I couldn't be happier. Well, you guys, it is right before my first race. If you're still watching the video, thanks for coming to work with me. You know, I used to be a piece of shit. I used to be a junkie. You know, I almost lost my arm in 2023 from cellulitis and endocarditis from IV substance use. And this is what we're doing now. Real player shit. You know, I used to believe in that shit, you know, that you had to be out here, you had to be slinging dope, you had to be wronging motherfuckers that wronged you. When really, I was on some dumb shit. Because the gratification I get now for providing for my family is something no drugs, no street motherfuckers, nothing can give me that type of gratification like knowing my little girl's alright, you know, like knowing my wife is alright. And, you know, she do gotta work, but that's just how this YouTube thing worked out, y'all know what I'm saying? But I've decided, you know, you guys like the reaction videos. You guys, you know, some of y'all like to see me talk in the podcast way. So I figured, why not take y'all to work with me? Like, what? Because I used to be a zombie. I used to be one of them zombie motherfuckers, you know, walking the street. Now I make goodie bags. You know, I take bags of weed and a bag of chips, and, you know, I give them out to the homeless. Because I know what it's like to be there. We're going to do a video tonight. Later on, we're going to be talking about how there was just a thing put out that there will no longer be government funding given to a harm reduction program. Which, if you ask me, that's just a double-edged sword. But at the end of the day, and, you know, what's his name? RFK Jr.? You know, he was on the dope at one time too. He knows that if you want to find a way to do some shit, you gonna find a way to do it. And that's just what time it is. But yeah. Oh. That's it, break. I hope everybody's having a good week so far. You know what's crazy is they have all kinds of nice tape guns around this bitch, but I like the old ones. Like that when I got when I first started working here and shit. All right, I'll catch you guys at break. All right, y'all know what time it is. Lunchtime. Real quick, I want to give you guys a good example of how I've changed as a person. You know, old Christian was a klepto. He could not be around anything of value. But when you grow up as a man and start changing your morals and values, I'm around thousands and thousands of cigarettes a day. And that's what it's like, you know, when you work somewhere, you know, your employer, they trust you. Y'all feel me? But when I first started and I thought about the quick buck that I could be making, you know, I thought to myself, these people trust me. They trust me to be around their shit, around their inventory, and the ability to feed my wife and feed my family outweighs any quick buck. You know what time it is? Back from lunch, back at it like a crack addict. Back here. So, yeah, you know, it's just one little step here and there, and you'll get to where you're trying. And here we are at lunchtime, you guys, which means we made it halfway through the day. We getting these hours in. Thank you guys for being here. We're gonna break it all down when we get home. And yeah, another point I would like to make is that old Christian, you know, even though it wouldn't do shit to me, being who I was before, I would see opportunity, you know, and I wouldn't be able to work around a pallet of 7-0, knowing what it is, knowing what it's doing to people, without being interested in trying some. Now, with my sobriety, I can work around any of that shit. I can be trusted. I'm a civilian, and the people I used to talk shit about before, working places, I realize now I need to be thankful to them for giving me a chance to have a job. So, I'm not going to bore you guys with every little detail of every job that I ever had. But I want to go through my work history with a little... I'm not going to bore you guys with every single little detail of every job I had. I just showed you guys a little bit about where I am today. Now we're going to talk about where I came from and a little bit about how we got here. So every single job tells a story about where in life I've been and what was going on. At the time, I always thought it was the job, the boss, the situation, whatever it was. But looking back, there was one common denominator through every single one of those situations, and that was me. My first job ever was at Taco Bell. I was 16 years old, and for most people, your first job is about learning responsibility, learning how to show up, learning how to work. But my life was already completely different. I was addicted to Roxy 30s at that point. My girl was pregnant. I was living on the streets. And I was a kid dealing with things that most people don't experience until much older. And I wasn't thinking about building a career or planning any type of future. I was just trying to survive and somehow keep everything together. And one day I was at that job and this 30-year-old lady, I used to call her Pancake. I don't remember her name. She was just a short and fat lady and she was really bitchy. But she asked me why I didn't change the steak, and I was just like, fuck your steak, I'm out of here. And after that, we said screw where we're living. We're going somewhere to start completely fresh. Not knowing if you don't change yourself, those same problems are just going to follow you. So we move a couple towns over, and I get a job at Felonies. And this job was different because by this point, I knew I had more responsibility. The baby was about to be born, and I had just moved into my own trailer at 16 while I was still a junior in high school. And this was the first job where I actually started taking work seriously, and I was there for almost 2.5 years. Pretty much all the way through high school till right at the end. And honestly, I was always a hard worker. I had a good work ethic. My family raised me that way. I get that from my dad and my mom. And the problem wasn't that I didn't want to work. The problem was that I was trying to build a life while battling addiction, still not thinking that I have a problem whatsoever. I was working hard, but at the same time, I had a heavy ice and pain pill habit. I would show up, I would do my jobs, but there was red flags that there was a little more going on behind the scenes. And that would eventually catch up with me. And back then, younger me had a horrible temper. Another situation, just like at Taco Bell, a larger woman, rest her soul, she's died since then. She was my boss, and we had words. I cussed her out 2 different times and got my job back. The third time I cussed her out, I did not get my job back. But that's an example of some of the first chances I got, and I couldn't take a hint. Eventually, though, that third time, boom, you're out of there. And I understand. Honestly, they should have probably fired me before then, but they looked at my situation and I guess had some type of pity on me. At the time, though, I blamed them, but now, looking back, I deeply understand that you can't expect people to put up with so much when you're just bringing chaos and bullshit into their workplace. After that, I went to Walmart, and by that point, I had moved out of that trailer because, when you're a drug addict, I had wrote out all the numbers and came up with, if I move in with my, the mother of my kid's mom, and we can help out with the bills, it'll be better. We'll have someone there to help us watch the new baby, and we'll have more money for our addiction and all that good stuff. But 14 days after I graduated high school, one of the most traumatic things in my life ever happened. I lose my son, and I was still fighting addiction, still dealing with social services, and trying to keep my kid. And I was taking on more responsibility than I was ready for. And at that point, a lot had happened when I worked at Walmart. So I lose my son, and I'm like, well, we're going through the phases, going to court, getting him placed with my cousin, because in Virginia, if you don't get your kid placed with your family or get an arrangement set up, you lose your rights within a year. Or at least that's the way it was supposed to be. But a little bit before I lost my job at Walmart, I had put in some paperwork saying I was going to miss work for my anger management classes because, they could see that I had problems controlling my emotions. Like one day, I cuss out my boss there, and I think that's just over. I thought it was done, but she gave me another chance because she had seen the paperwork and knew that I was really trying to work on it. I made the mistake of going and telling somebody else about what happened, though. The next day, I was fired. And, that was kind of the story of my life back then. I would get an opportunity, people would give me chances, then I would do what I did best. Something to mess it up, because I was never ever dealing with the real problem. After that, I lost everything in that town and decided once again for a fresh start without fixing the real problems that were already there. So we moved back to where we originally were staying, and I get a job at a calzone shop called DPDO. And this was a weird time in my life because I was around a lot of people around my age, college students, but my life was completely different. They were living the college experience. I was trying to raise my kid, my daughter Claire, you know, my baby. We had just had her, and you know, my wife, she was doing a 2.5-year prison bid, so it was just me, my mom, and the baby. And I was trying to figure out how to be a father while still dealing with my own problems. And me and my mom, we bless her heart, you know, she passed, and we had a very exciting relationship, as every mother and son does. You know, she knew how to piss me off. So there was a lot of arguing, you know, and stuff there. And it was just a hard time in my life for me. Because I no matter how much I tried to get the approval, all I ever wanted was my mom to think I was doing good. And, you know, doing enough to make her happy. But when she knew everything that was going on behind the scenes, because if you guys have watched my other videos, you know, me and my mom were used together. And she was always my best friend instead of being my mom. And I feel like that was a big mistake that I learned that, you know, I carry out in my own parenting. But, you know, I was on and off at DPDO for 2 years. Eventually, I come in one day after taking 10 Valiums, and I drop a big pile of pans, and I'm told never to come back. But that was a cool place working there. Shout out to everybody who worked there with me, you know, and putting up with my crazy ass when y'all was just trying to go to college and live normal lives, and I was trying to, you know, trap out of that bitch. I was sneaking people in the back, you know, I was right there drinking beers, and they loved me, and they treated me like one of their own, and they put up with my continuous bullshit for years. Then, you know, I lose that job, and I started working at a custodial company on the Virginia Tech campus. Honestly, looking back, I don't even know how I kept that job as long as I did. I was deep into my ice addiction, and at this time, I was on no program. I was just using, you know, pills and Suboxone when I could get it, and maintaining with Kratom. And, you know, me and another guy that had the same route working at that custodian the custodian company, we had figured out how to get everything done really fast on our route. Just, you know, go through that shit to where we could do what took most people all night in like 2 hours, and we could finish the work, then basically go chill in a dark classroom for the rest of the night. At that time, I thought I had shit figured out, you know, how to make things work, but really I was just finding ways to hide how bad things were. Eventually, that partner quits, and I get another partner. And the same thing started happening. But in this time, instead of chilling there till our shift was over, we start leaving campus, you know, and I'm going over to my homeboys. I got a walkie-talkie on my side that still connects. So if they call for me, I can get to them quick, you know, and meet up with my bosses if I have to. Then he quit. And one day, after being awake for days, I ended up falling asleep in a closet. I woke up, went outside, there was cops everywhere. That was pretty much the end of me being trusted to work alone there. And, you know, that job would fall by the wayside very shortly after. And, you know, it's just a lot of traumatic shit going on with my mom kicking me out and letting me come back, and kicking me out and letting me come back. And it was just a really crazy time in my addiction. It's when, you know, I had really ramped up the bubble, you know. But I got a job at this place that I opened right up across the street from me, at this place called Slice Queen. And this dude, Angelo, owned it. One of the coolest fucking dudes I ever met. Like, I wish I had a time machine and I could meet that dude now, because, like, we clicked so good. And he was one of my true mentors until I fucked it up. This is the one I probably regret the most because I had somebody that actually believed in me. He was willing to give me a chance. So this was the deal. He'd give me $1,000 a week, $1,000. But I had to get up and work 8 to 2, and then I had a break from 3 to 5, and then work 5 to close. And I was salary, so I had to work as many hours as he said. And he had a hospitality guy named Hunter who, like, he had worked at Chick-fil-A before or some shit, but he was just, you know, on my ass. When the guy that had hired me and was giving me a chance, we were like best friends. And, you know, he was somebody who was willing to take me under his wing and to teach me a skill. And I really wanted to work with him long term. Looking back, I wish I could have made that work the rest of my life. Like I wish I could have turned that Detroit style way of making pizza into something that he could eventually pass down to me. That's the way he put it. And, you know, who knows? My dream, one of my many ventures, is to open up a Detroit style pizzeria, because he showed me a lot of tricks that are like hush hush, I feel like, unless you're in the like New Jersey pizza making culture, you know. And so my life was falling apart, and this is when I start going to jail. And I had picked up a couple assaults, picked up a couple of shopliftings, nothing crazy, but I had to do some weekends in jail, and I was trying to juggle too much while still trying to feed my addiction. You might have heard in some of the other videos, that's when they roped me in thinking I was getting on house arrest, and then they drug tested me and kept me. But at that point, he was done with, like, a lot of my behavior. I also made a mistake. One of the big mistakes I made about him is I told him my life story and a lot of the things that was going on with me. A lot I didn't tell him, obviously. But, you know, I told him a little bit too much, and, you know, he told me that he liked the booger sugar from time to time. And I had homeboys, you know, I'm not going to say that allegedly had a good, like, they had shit flowing on the deep web for a while. They did their thing. I don't know where they are now. But, you know, I told him I could get him some of that booger sugar. And I didn't even need to do this. I had money. He was paying me good. I had a job. I had opportunities. But I told him I ordered it. I spent the money. And after 3 weeks of bullshitting him, the mixture of me ripping him off that $200 and having to do these weekends in jail just collides. And he gets the dude Hunter to give me my last check, and I think that was his way of firing me, because I don't think he had the heart to do it himself. But shout out to Angelo. I hope you're getting it, bro, wherever you are. You gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. I hope to see you one day in my future. Maybe shake my hands. But, you know, if you ever want to be like, show people, look, that's the cracked out juggalo kid I hired. I wasn't even a juggalo I didn't identify as that shit, but they thought I was a juggalo for some reason. But I ended up taking his money, made some bad decisions, and I burned that bridge. And that was somebody who was actually trying to help me. And that's pretty much what my work life looked like for years. I could work, I could be a hard worker, I could learn skills, but I couldn't stay consistent because I was fighting something bigger than just trying to keep a job. For a long time, I called myself a functioning addict. I thought because I could still work sometimes, because I could still pay some bills, because I could still change some diapers, because I could still show up, that I was different than the junkie slept over in the corner, when that was not the case. There is no such thing to me as a functioning addict. You're just maintaining long enough to convince yourself you're okay. You know, you're never going to build a future. You're just surviving until the next problem comes. Eventually, I got to the point where I couldn't hold down a job at all. And I was just so frail and like skinny looking, like you could look at me and tell like I was at death's door. And I couldn't do anything without needing to go to the bathroom and do me a little bump, do me a whatever, and keep me going, or else I'd be sick as shit. So I couldn't commit to anything. And my entire life became about just getting through the day, way more than it already was. And the crazy thing is, when you're living like that, you don't always realize how bad it is, because that becomes the norm. It wasn't until I finally started changing my life and myself that I realized how much of my life I spent wasting trying to maintain something that was never actually sustainable. The reason I'm telling the story is because I know there are people maybe watching this who are in the same position. Maybe you still have a job. Maybe you still look like you have everything together. Maybe everybody around you thinks you're okay. But you know deep down, you know in your heart, if you were like me, you're hanging on by a thread. And I'm not saying that shit to judge anybody. I'm saying it because I was you. I am you. But eventually, I had to realize that the life you're living doesn't just magically fix itself. Nobody's gonna come and save you. And one of my favorite sayings my cousin always told me was, the world doesn't stop because you feel like shit. There's people that still got to get out here every day and get this shit cracking. Today, I'm standing in we're about to move into a house that we bought. I have a family, I have responsibilities, and I have something worth protecting. And when I look back at all those jobs, all those mistakes, all those times I burned opportunities, I realized the biggest thing that I had to change wasn't the job, it wasn't the location, it wasn't the people, it wasn't my situation, it was me. And when I look back at my work history, the biggest thing I have to be honest about is during active addiction, I couldn't hold down shit. I couldn't go out and get a job. I couldn't convince myself that I was going to be anywhere on time. Everything changed. I could tell myself that I was finally going to get my life together, but without certain moving pieces, everything's going to stay the same. I would have these big plans that I was going to magically turn around, and it just became like a broken record to especially the people I loved. So I would come up with a plan and be like, guys, I finally got it. I'm going to get my shit together. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, Christian. Then a couple days later, a week later, something would happen. I'd lose it. I'd be too sick to go to work. I'd get too high to function. I'd have an attitude. I'd get to an argument with somebody. Or I just wouldn't be able to keep up because my entire life was built around trying to maintain my addiction and stay in denial while completely lying to myself and telling myself, you got this. The crazy part is, in my head, I really thought that I was so close to fixing my life than I actually was. I thought I was just one job, one opportunity, and one paycheck from figuring it all out. And, I wasn't fixing anything else like that I would needed to. The problem wasn't fixing the actual problem. It was trying to build a life that was still controlled by something that was trying to destroy it. My mom never wanted anything crazy for me in this world. She didn't care if I was rich. She didn't care if I had some huge career. She didn't care about any of that. God rest her soul. She just wanted to make me she wanted me to make an honest living. She always said that. That's all her and my mom and dad ever wanted. They wanted me to wake up, go to work, take care of my responsibilities, and be something that they knew was going to be okay. And for a long time, I couldn't do any of that. I wanted to so bad. Like, they don't know how bad I wanted to. How bad I just wanted my life to change. And, being capable to do it and wanting to do it are two completely different things when you're in active addiction. And when you're on H, when you're on ice, when you're using any type of substances, anything like that, it's going to control your brain. You might think you're the one making the decisions, but eventually the addiction starts making the decisions for you, telling you y'all are one. And you might think you're functioning because you're still showing up every day, or you're still showing up sometimes, you're still talking to people, you're still getting jobs when you lose them, but you're not actually building anything. You're just maintaining enough to get to the next day. And that's the thing people don't understand about being a functioning addict. You're not functioning, you're surviving, and holding on by a thread and convincing yourself that because you haven't lost everything yet, that you're okay. But every single day, you're putting yourself closer to losing the things you care about the most. Because when you're in addiction, time moves differently. You think you have the time to fix things in the next week. You think you're going to get clean after this last hit, this last shot, this last rehab stay. And, you think you're going to get your life together after you handle this one thing. And then you look up and weeks are gone, months are gone, years are gone, and you realize that you've been standing in the same place the whole time. The same exact place the whole time, just like I was. 5 years, just zoom. For me, the biggest thing, though, that started changing my life was getting away from my environment. I know it sounds corny, but people, places, and things. I was stuck in my environment, and getting a fresh start was something I needed. I needed something different. I needed a different routine, and going to jail this last time is part of what helped me build a routine and say, all right, this bid, I am going to start preparing to go back out into society. But the same things kept pulling me back into the same cycle. And even sitting in jail, I remember thinking, when I get out, I'm just going to get a job. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to play my role. And when I say play my role, I mean my role as a father, my role as a partner, my role as somebody that people that love me can depend on. Because for so many years, I wasn't that person. I wasn't capable of being that person, but I thought I was. I spent so many years hating everything I saw in the mirror. I hated who I became. I hated the choices I made. I hated the damage I had caused my family, my friends, and just people in general. And instead of facing that, I spent years trying to escape it. If there was anything that could make me not have to be Christian or be inside my body for a minute, I was going to do it. If there was an air duster on the table, I was going to huff that shit. If there was a pallet, like at my job now, if there was a pallet of 7-0 around me, I was going to try to get fucked up on it even if it didn't work. That's just who I was, And I was chasing that escape. And, I was trying to escape so bad, I would smoke, snort, or take anything I could to escape. And I wasn't looking for fun. I was looking for a way to not have to sit there and be Christian Whitlow. That's all I wanted. And because in my mind, my happy place was in the nod. Because it got to where I would have to stay up for days and then do the dope to eventually get because that was the most happiest feeling in my life, was that blackness. And then being pissed because I woke up, because I fell asleep and didn't get to enjoy it. And that's a hard thing to admit, because you eventually realize the person that's been running your entire life, it's not you, it's the addiction. And you can't outrun yourself. You can move towns, you can get new jobs, you can change relationships, you can change everything around you. But if you don't change what's inside, it's going to keep bringing you the same problems everywhere you go. Believe me. And the biggest thing that changed for me was getting to a point where I didn't hate myself anymore. Where no matter what, where even being in jail and being like, I am disappointing everyone around me. I'm going to take this bid to better myself and to be a different Christian when I get out. But I did that, and I had a chance to start fresh, but do the work internally at the same time. And when you're in that lifestyle, there's the good days where you're making money. You know, you're doing a damn thing. You know, you feel smug, you feel arrogant. You know that you're on one. You know, you got this shit. You know, but there's other days where you are so down and out, you would do anything to not feel how you're feeling. But I started to respect myself enough to wake up and know what I needed to do. I started realizing that I'm not the worst thing I ever done. And that's what made me realize I could do this. It made me realize that I could do something like making content, you know, and find something I could be interested in. Sorry, I thought she about choked on some shit while I'm making. Y'all see her? She's a mean baby. But anyway, let's finish what we were talking about. So, I found something I loved, like making content. And because at the end of the day, I was watching Vlad TV interview earlier. Shout out Vlad. And I heard Charleston White say something that really connected with me. He said, I can be a public figure because I don't got no skeletons in my closet. And that made me realize that, you know, I thought the same thing a long time ago, just in different words. Because I don't have to hide anymore. I don't have some fake ass image that I need to protect. I can be honest about where I came from, and because that's the whole point. I want people to see somebody who was homeless, somebody who was addicted, somebody who couldn't hold down a job, and somebody who made horrible decisions. This guy can still turn it around. Even if this content thing never becomes what I hope it does, that's okay. I'm still okay grinding away because in doing what I'm doing now, in providing for my family, because I learned something so valuable. It's priceless that I couldn't learn while using. You know, you can't attach yourself too much to anything material when you're in addiction, because it's going to take it from you. Cars, money, relationships, anything you love. You think you can't live without it? Addiction will show you that you can, and that you can lose it all. And as long as you have that substance, that's all you need. But that is the fucking worst perspective to have. And when you come to that realization, then you can move forward. So now I look at life completely different. I don't need everything to be perfect. I don't need to have the biggest house or the most money or anything like that. I just need to wake up every day and know that I'm doing the right thing. I need to know that I'm being a good husband, a good father, and somebody people can count on. And for the people out there who think that they're too far gone, because I know there's an addict watching this, that there's a felon like me that has made mistakes, and I want you to understand that your past doesn't have to be the thing that controls the rest of your life. People are going to judge you just the same way they fucking judge me. People are going to tell you that you can't do it. And when you're in that type of environment, the people around you do not want to see you succeed and come up out of it. People are going to remind you of every mistake you made and try to keep you down. But eventually, you have to decide, like an umbilical cord, to cut that shit. If you're going to keep proving them right, or if you're going to start proving yourself wrong. Because excuses are like assholes. You know, everyone's got one, and they all stink. I had bags of them, plenty of excuses. I built a life on excuses, you know. But excuses don't build a life. Actions do. Today I wake up with a purpose. Today I wake up knowing that I have something worth protecting. Today I wake up knowing that the person looking back at me in the mirror is somebody I'm proud of. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. Thank you guys for watching. I love you. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.